welcome back to my huge channel, everybody. Wearing black is probably one of the easiest fashion statements to make. Well, that's what people wearing black are usually being accused of. It's easy, try to be cool in colors instead. But one thing for sure, black makes a lot of things easier. I think we all know this from our day-to-day life. Black is a bit like an escape. It's like the exit. It's the last chance you take when you're absolutely devastated in your wardrobe and you don't know what to do. Black is always there for you. And black is not just a cool color because of the non-existent color combination stress you will have in the morning. Think of any favorite movie actor or actress that you saw in a sharp, edgy, smart role. They're most certainly wearing black. After having understood why the color black has this image that we all have on our minds, which is usually the fact that it's the coolest person in the room, that is so edgy and careless and just cool, we will also figure out what it means to wear black clothes nowadays and how you can adapt it to your personal aesthetic, because not all black looks are the same aesthetic and design, and they all have a different root to where they come from. And today we're talking about understanding black looks and how we make the best out of it. There used to be a time where wearing black was pretty much uncommon. For example, before the Middle Ages, where things like dye were rare and only accessible for the highly privileged upper class. If you look around your favorite art book or museum, you will figure that the monarchies and upper class were fancy in colors as well, which is the same reason as why they were wearing black. They had the money to afford strong, vibrant colors, including black. The reason for the exclusion of specific colors from lower social classes were the sumptuary laws. That go back to ancient Greek times, where social laws were invented to keep the clear distinction of rich and poor, high and low. Some funny examples throughout the world that I wanted to mention here because man, the world was fucked up. In Japan's Edo period, strict sumptuary laws were very common. With the beginning of the second half of the 19th century, some rules started to get problematic when the Chonin merchants, and therefore lower class, got wealthier than the aristocratic samurai class. To maintain the superiority of the samurai, they were restricted and not allowed to carry a sword, for example. In England, under the reign of Edward IV in 1483, there were laws in force that forbid golden fabrics, purples, velvet on velvet and brocades to no one else than knights and lords. So if anyone ever tells you again that fashion is irrelevant and a spoiled hobby, you say no. It's actually pretty political. It is so political that laws needed to be enforced to protect the upper classes from the growing strength of the lower hierarchies. Fashion is a symbol of power, and it hasn't changed up to this day. So coming back to why wearing black is so different from any other color and how we can make it work somehow. So when we think of people wearing the color black, we usually think of avant-garde people, gothics, or people in the service industry. For example, the guy in front of the club you never managed to get into, or a bodyguard. Usually people that are pretty strong within the service industry, I would say. And one of the biggest misconceptions we have towards the avant-garde is that we think if you don't feel the heavy weight of the world and pain in your chest, you're not truly avant-garde and you will not be able to wear solidly black. Because even though the meaning of black hasn't changed fully since mankind exists, it still has changed slightly since the 19th century. Even though black stood for centuries for nobility and power, it now seems something like the exact opposite. We're almost speaking of egalitarianism. The big transition of men's fashion in the beginning of the 19th century, from bright, vibrant and even flamboyant fashion to a very elegant black tie attire, kind of ended the era of dressing while having fun for men for a pretty long time. But the then new, modern and elegant approach to men's fashion, which included a lot of black, can also be understood as a progressive form of men's fashion back then, because everything also got a tiny bit more accessible. With the change to the black attire for men, somebody called Coco Chanel decided to create something called the little black dress. And in a Vogue article from 1926, it was described as Chanel's Ford, in order to emphasize the fact that it was technically accessible for women of all classes. Wearing the color black, therefore, evokes kind of the feeling of elegance and sophistication nowadays. But there are also different meanings that we have for wearing black. It's the most light-absorbing one, it's the least striking one. It gives you also anonymity. Like the Black Bloc movement that developed in the 80s in Germany by autonomous protesters who are covering themselves in black clothes only to not be identifiable as individuals by the police, but also to appear as one strong unit. unity. Or as Beau Brummel said, one of the most influential people to create the new men's attire, to be truly elegant, one should not be noticed. So knowing all of this might help you to understand why wearing black has this attitude of elitism and being snobbish. And it's because its roots lie in a new foundation of elitism in the 19th century. So now that we all finished our history exam, let's talk about the current state of dressing in black and what it means, and why we're kind of all failing in it. And of course, my most beloved human beings out there, support me on Patreon if you want to see one more video weekly that is very personal, where I vlog and talk about my, where I do personal styling, where I just run around in my apartment. I think it's interesting, so if you do enjoy my videos here, you might enjoy this as well. Join my Patreon or join the Discord chat server, which is amazing. We're so many people. If you're searching for like-minded people that are into fashion and very smart, very smart, and have very cool style, because we're talking about our style. We have live chats where we talk about our personal styles, about runways. We're judging together runways. I think it's amazing. It's the best place on earth for me personally. So join the Discord and my Patreon and subscribe to this channel. I also do have an Instagram where I run around, sometimes half naked, so this you can watch as well. And let's go. Dressing successfully in black requires to have a few criteria checked with your inner self to be also successful in depicting exactly the right form of dressing in black that you want to have. First, who is your stylistic idol? Is it the avant-garde or the minimalists? Second, are you aware of the fabrics you're wearing? Third, are you aware of the textures these fabrics have? Fourth, are you layering correctly? This all sounds super easy and it feels like fashion is always the same and it all comes down to these points, but wearing black is a bit different. It's a bit different. The first question is actually the hardest because you need to decide. And I know everything is possible in fashion and you can invent yourself every day and you can choose a new stylistic approach every day. But let's be realistic, you usually have one strong aesthetic and then you have like some minimal aesthetics that evolve out of that. You usually tend to have a certain vibe, a certain image around your looks. And when you're dressing black fully, you probably also have one certain way of doing it. For example, number one, your stylistic idol. Is it Yohji Yamamoto and Rei Kawakubo? Is it Martha Margiela? Is it Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen with the row? Or is it actually Alaya? All these brands have the usage of the color black as one of their brand identities, but they all mean something completely different. And that's why you cannot compare any full black look with each other, because it depends so much on where the design comes from and what the meaning of it is. Rei Kawakubo speaks very often about the pain and anger when designing, but one of her disciples, Kai Ninomiya, might be even more dedicated, hence his brand name Noir, Kai Ninomiya. And in 2018 he told the New York Times that it helps him to focus on actual design. So in terms of Kai Ninomiya, for example, who's a representative of the avant-garde movement, it's actually a form of artificial restriction to focus even more on the design. So it has a very specific design focus. It's not because these people decide to not design in colors. He just restricts himself on purpose to be able to express something even different, which is every time new design. And there you can find an interview with Rei Kawakubo after showing the collection Lumps and Bumps, which is probably one of the most influential and striking ones of her career, where she talks about the design decisions that she took. And you know, the collection is a very colorful one. So I would say if one of the founders of the avant-garde movement we have in our century is saying it's not black clothes only, it's not only about black clothes can be very banal, this shows that avant-garde fashion is not only about dressing in black. But of course, overall it's still your choice. So if you decide to only proceed with the very much black outfits of these brands, you can do that. And there are also way more black fits than colorful ones, I would say, overall, but it's not the essence of the avant-garde. And afterwards you can say, I choose the black way. So this is just one designer, one aesthetic that is pretty striking for the black clothes as well. But there's so many different ones, and that's a very specific aesthetic. But if we're talking about the raw aesthetic, that is definitely more inspired from the probably elitist approach we had at the beginning of the 19th century when dressing, because if you look at the designs, it's usually very classic, elegant, sophisticated fashion. And this is a completely different aesthetic where you probably go more in terms of anonymity, not thought-provoking pieces, but still elegance and high quality. Especially also because of the brand name that says The Row, which is inspired by the Savile Row, which is the very prestigious Taylor Street in London. So you see that the brand reduces themselves actually to like classical tailor wear, and they have kind of a modern approach to it. But their usage of black definitely stands for reduction, and not being too prominent, being pretty quiet in all senses. And it actually fits pretty well with the quote I just mentioned: to be truly elegant, one should not be noticed. The Row is a brand that copies a lot of existent designs that already existed in the last decade. So there's not so much new invention that you see actually, but still nowadays we don't have so many brands that have this approach, so it's nice to have. What I want to say here is it's so important that you understand in which design aesthetic you want to improve. There are a lot of minimal pieces from Comme des Garçons, there are outrageously extravagant ones. Then you have the Row, where you also have pretty much one aesthetic only, I would say. There are also brands in between. There's also Alaya that used to have a lot of dark designs. There's also Givenchy. There's also Balenciaga, where you probably have a bit more a casual approach to the way you're wearing, or you do like the references to Cristobal Balenciaga and the hourglass shapes and the very extreme tailoring. So what I want to say here is mixing different styles is amazing if you're really capable of combining Comme des Garçons with, I don't know, some Supreme. Probably that works pretty well actually. But it's probably not so perfect in terms of you want to improve your personal style, and if you struggle with wearing all black looks that still look elevated, and I say elevated in a very general manner, I don't mean sophisticated with that, it's probably better to stick to one aesthetic. You can have breaking stuff, you need to have a contrast in your look, but you probably go with one aesthetic overall. So that's why you need to know your designers, and you need to know the different aesthetics and the images you can create with wearing black. You are a very different person wearing head to toe Comme des Garçons or the Row. It's again full black, but you speak two different languages, and even your view on life, everything is very much visible with the clothes that you're wearing. I chose these two extremes, but there are a lot of different brands in between. So rule number one is fabrics. And I know you're all aware of fabrics. I keep talking about this in every video. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to keep talking about fabrics, but I still feel like it's extremely important to emphasize how important fabrics are. They're actually life-changing. Especially when deciding to go with a dark look overall, you need to be even more careful with the fabrics. You know, with colors, you can lie a bit, you know, you can wear something washed out in pink or orange, it will be cute, it will look slightly faded, you know, you have your LA, California vibes, you can create that. You can create that with black as well. You can have your washed out black shirt or black pant, but only until a certain point. After a period of time, it might just look like a slouchy look you do groceries with, which is also absolutely fine, but probably not something you want to wear every day. So even with buying new black clothes, you need to be very careful with what kind of fabric they have. For example, a great example is lyocell. And I know a lot of people love it because it's breathable and it's organic and it's usually very much sustainable. Wash it a few times, you will have an amazing gray sweater. It will not be black anymore. So you need to be aware of what kind of fabrics will be long lasting wearing black and what will not, and with what are you okay. Maybe it's okay for you that it's going to fade because you like the aesthetic. You should just be aware, because we're here on this channel are trying always to build a long lasting wardrobe. So it's pretty much important that you know what your fabrics mean. One of my favorite fabrics when it comes to black is nylon. And of course we're all thinking of the Prada nylon, and I think it's just an amazing fabric. It never gets old, it never looks washed out, and it has an amazing texture. We will talk about textures later, but textures and fabrics are like this. They're best friends because it's actually just the same fabric that has a texture. So it's actually the same person kind of. But still, the texture is something else that comes on top of it, literally. Nylon is amazing. Mohair is amazing. Leathers are amazing. Silks are amazing. Felted wool or even stretched jerseys. All these fabrics will turn you into a different person when chosen. For example, I think when it comes to stretched jersey, Princess Skula is an amazing brand. When it comes to felted wool, Jill Sander is an amazing brand. When it comes to leather, there are so many good brands that I'm not aware of because I never purchase leather items, but they are everywhere, I guess. And what is very important when it comes to these things is they all absorb light differently. So when you choose to just wear one minimalist, I say minimalist because of the selection of one color. When you decide to only go for one color, you can play with light and darkness, with the reflection. And that's when we end up with the textures. The texture is the thing that is actually just as important as the fabric. As much as I love wool, I don't love every texture of wool. So I need to be very careful how it looks like. When you choose mohair, you decide to go the all fluffy in way. You give it all. You will look very fluffy, it will look slightly voluminous, Pairing something mohair with leather will look very interesting because the leather will have some light reflection on it. It is this ultra sleek fabric that you have. On top of it, if you compare it with something mohair or like a thick wool sweater, it will break extremely this light game that you have, you know, with the pants. And that's something super exciting, and that's how you can create more excitement in your monochrome looks. If you choose, for example, satin and leather, it's a bit more alike, so it will be a bit less exciting. But combining silk with wool again is very exciting because they both reflect the light completely differently. And you will see it when somebody passes you on the street that you will say, okay, this is all black, but why does this look so chic and so elegant, even though it's so minimal? It's just a sweater and a pant, or it's just a sweater and a skirt with some shoes under it. Same goes for avant-garde fashion. If you manage here to create a mix of different fabrics, of probably a cotton t-shirt with a wool blazer, with, I don't know, leather pants underneath, or nylon pants underneath, you can create definitely an amazing look with the same color if you choose different fabrics and textures. And that's like the most important thing. The only thing equally important is your talent to layer stuff. And I know there are many looks where you don't even have to layer things. I personally also like it if it's so thought-free that I just have one item on top and one at the bottom. But I always prefer my looks that are overly layered. And if you follow me on Instagram, you will have figured that I do like layering a lot. It creates so much excitement. So you don't have to go out like this every day, but if you want to experiment with your personal style, and especially with the color black, because you're kind of bored with the way that you wear black, and you can definitely increase the level of excitement here, you should learn to layer. You should learn to layer different lengths of black. You know, you can have a long cardigan, something ultra short on top of that. You can have a cropped pant with long socks underneath. Like, socks are also a perfect garment where you can learn layering, which is not so daring, so you might not feel so uncomfortable. I think socks and tights are an amazing way. Gloves are an amazing way. Hats, these are all these accessories. But layering also comes down to just layering the clothing items. This we see a lot in the avant-garde world, of course, where you have a lot of layered jackets, a lot of layered pants, and even the bags seem like they're part of the whole aesthetic. I even personally like it a lot if you have some washed out colors as well, because you see the contrast of this very dense ultra black shade even more when something's washed out. Because if it's fully black, you might again just turn into a security guy. And believe me, your undimmable look will not save you from there. But if you have a Yuji Yamamoto look or less prominent brands that definitely go into the avant-garde aesthetic, layering is key. To me, it's the most important thing because there are also so many avant-garde brands that have very minimal appearing single items. But if you manage to layer it correctly, you create this extremely exciting and visually beautiful constellation of different fabrics and layers. And then you can be very free and individual, so you decide how you want to go. But if you chose the right fabrics, if you chose the right textures, if you know in which kind of aesthetic you want to go, you just need to figure out the layering. And the same is also for the very minimal approach that you have. I think you can tweak it a bit more. Being minimal is nice, but the fact of being able to wear 2 t-shirts on top of each other, probably not on the hottest day of summer, but you can just wear 2 t-shirts on top of each other. I know we talked about the polo collar as well, but I prefer to wear like 2 crew necks on top of each other, one very thin one longer one. And then you just push the arms on top, for example, and you have the thinner one coming down. You immediately created a layer. You still have your very minimal approach. It looks very chic and elegant, but you create some excitement. The same goes for socks. We have on our Discord amazing Garrett, who always likes to pair 2 socks on top of each other, like a nylon sock and a wool sock. And he's amazing at doing it, and I've never seen it before, and it's just insane what he can do with like very minimal tweaks and layering, and emphasize the color black, for example, with black nylon socks and black wool socks on top of it, and just turn it into an extremely exciting form of wearing black. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows, even though I made this video, and I think it's very important to talk about how to be able to dress well in black clothes easily, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that we don't consider dressing in black something superior. And I think if Rei Kawakubo said that, nobody can say anything against that. It's not about black and white, guys. It's about all colors. But we can learn to manage to create a monochromatic black look more easily. And I think that's what it's about. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel here if you haven't done that yet. I have a Patreon where I post weekly about my own styling things. I don't know, I do everything there. I vlog there. It's very personal. So if you want to support me even more than just a subscription, you can join my Patreon and get another weekly video there. We have a Discord chat that is insane, full of fashion freaks, the best kind in the world, where I personally learned so much and where I'm so happy that we found each other and we're so many people now. We have amazing discussions and meetups. So join the Discord, the links will be down below, and I guess I'm gonna see you next week. Yeah. Where is my mic? Bye.